Get out! All of you, get out of my house right now! Mira, calm down. You're being so dramatic. It's just a little gathering. A little gathering? I'm in labor. There are 50 people in my living room drinking and dancing while I'm having contractions. Well, your due date isn't for another week. How was I supposed to know you'd go into labor today? Stop ruining everyone's good time. My sister-in-law threw a party in our house while I was having contractions. Hi, I'm Mira. Today I'm going to tell you my story, but before I continue, please like, share, and subscribe to hear more stories like this. I'm 29 years old, married to my husband Kieran for 3 years, and up until 8 months ago, I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. I work as a graphic designer from home. We own a beautiful house in Portland, Oregon, and I was 9 months pregnant with our first baby. Everything should have been perfect, but my sister-in-law Thessaly decided to throw a surprise party in my house while I was literally going into labor, and that was just the beginning of how she tried to destroy the most important moment of my life. Let me give you some background on Thessaly. She's Kieran's younger sister, 26 years old, and has always been the center of attention in their family. Their parents, Dimitri and Octavia, treat her like she can do no wrong. She's dramatic, entitled, and has this way of making everything about herself. When Kieran and I got engaged, she threw a fit because we didn't ask her to help plan the wedding. When we bought our house, she complained that we didn't buy one closer to her apartment. When I got pregnant, Thessaly's behavior got worse. She started acting like my pregnancy was somehow taking attention away from her. At family dinners, when people would ask about the baby or my health, she'd interrupt with stories about her job or her dating life. When I posted ultrasound pictures on social media, she'd post bikini photos the same day to get more likes. It was exhausting. But Kieran kept saying that's just how she is, and I needed to be more understanding. My due date was set for March 15th. As I got closer to delivery, I started nesting hard. I wanted everything perfect for when we brought the baby home. I deep cleaned the entire house, organized the nursery, stocked the freezer with meals. I was also getting nervous about labor and delivery, reading every book and article I could find, trying to prepare myself mentally. Thessaly knew all of this. She'd been over to the house several times in those final weeks, seeing me waddle around uncomfortably, complaining about back pain and false contractions. She knew I was anxious and on edge, just waiting for labor to start. Then came March 8th, 1 week before my due date. Kieran had to go into the office that day for an important presentation he couldn't miss. He was a project manager at a tech company, and this presentation was for a major client. He left early in the morning, promising he'd have his phone on loud and would come home immediately if anything happened. I was home alone, trying to rest because I'd had trouble sleeping the night before. Around 10 in the morning, I started feeling contractions. At first, they were mild and irregular, so I thought they might be more Braxton Hicks false alarms. But over the next hour, they got stronger and more consistent. I started timing them, and they were coming every 8 minutes. I called Kieran. Hey, I think this might be it. Contractions are regular and getting stronger. Are you sure? You're not due for another week. Babies don't always come on their due dates. I think we should be ready to go to the hospital soon. Okay, my presentation ends at noon. I'll come straight home after. Call me if anything changes. I hung up and continued timing contractions. They were getting more intense, now coming every 6 minutes. I called my obstetrician's office, and the nurse said to come to the hospital once they were 5 minutes apart or if my water broke. That's when I heard a key in the front door. I'd given Thessaly a spare key months ago in case of emergencies, back when she was being helpful and offering to check on our house when we traveled. I assumed she'd stopped by to visit, which was terrible timing but typical of her lack of boundaries. I walked out of the bedroom to tell her this wasn't a good time, and I froze. Thessaly wasn't alone. She had 3 other women with her, all carrying bags and boxes. Music was playing from a portable speaker. Thessaly, what's going on? Surprise, I'm throwing you a baby shower. What, today? I didn't know about this. That's why it's a surprise? I invited all your friends and family. Everyone's coming at 11. I felt a contraction starting and had to grab the doorframe. Thessaly, I can't do this today. I'm having contractions. I think I'm in labor. She laughed. You're not due for another week. Those are probably just false contractions. Don't worry, this will be fun. We have games and food and gifts. No, these are real. They're regular and getting stronger. I need you to cancel this party right now. Mira, you're being paranoid. First babies always come late. My friend had her first baby 2 weeks past her due date. You're fine. Now help me set up. Another contraction hit, stronger this time. I breathed through it while Thessaly and her friends started decorating my living room with pink and blue balloons and streamers. I couldn't believe this was happening. Thessaly, please. I'm asking you to cancel this. I need to rest and prepare to go to the hospital. Stop being so dramatic. You'll thank me later for throwing you such a nice party. I tried calling Kieran, but it went straight to voicemail. He'd probably silenced his phone for the presentation. I texted him. Your sister is throwing a party at our house and won't leave. I'm having contractions every 5 minutes. Need you home now. By 11, people started arriving. Friends from work, neighbors, some of Kieran's family members. I tried to tell people I was in labor and this was a mistake, but Thessaly kept intercepting, saying I was just nervous and everything was fine. She'd apparently told everyone that this was a surprise party I didn't know about, so people thought my protests were just shock at the surprise. The house filled with people. Music was blaring. There was food everywhere. And I was in my bedroom, having contractions every 5 minutes, trying desperately to reach Kieran. The noise was overwhelming, and the stress was making everything worse. Around 11:30, my water broke. I felt the gush and knew immediately what it was. This baby was coming, and I needed to get to the hospital right away. I grabbed my hospital bag and walked out into the living room full of party guests. Get out! All of you! Get out of my house right now! Thessaly rushed over, looking annoyed. Mira, calm down. You're being so dramatic. It's just a little gathering. A little gathering? I'm in labor. There are 50 people in my living room drinking and dancing while I'm having contractions. Well, your due date isn't for another week. How was I supposed to know you'd go into labor today? Stop ruining everyone's good time. I stared at her in disbelief. My water just broke. I need to go to the hospital right now. Everyone needs to leave. The room went quiet. People started realizing this wasn't a joke. Some guests began apologizing and heading for the door. But Thessaly just stood there, arms crossed, looking offended. This is so typical of you, Mira, always needing to be the center of attention. I spent days planning this party, and you're ruining it. I'm ruining it? You threw a party in my house without asking while I'm in labor. Kieran finally burst through the front door at that moment, looking panicked. He'd seen my text when his presentation ended. He took in the scene, the decorations, the people, me standing there in wet clothes, clearly having just had my water break. What is going on here? Your sister threw a party and won't make people leave. My water broke. We need to go to the hospital. Kieran turned to Thessaly, his face dark with anger I'd rarely seen from him. You did what? I threw Mira a baby shower. I was trying to do something nice and she's being ungrateful and dramatic. She's in labor. Get everyone out of our house right now. You're both overreacting. The baby's not even due yet. Kieran started physically ushering people out, apologizing but making it clear everyone needed to leave immediately. Most people left quickly, embarrassed and apologetic, but Thessaly's friends stayed, helping her pack up decorations and complaining about how their hard work was being unappreciated. I had another strong contraction and nearly doubled over. Kieran abandoned the cleanup and helped me to the car. As we were pulling out of the driveway, I could see Thessaly and her friends still in our house, taking their time leaving. The drive to the hospital was tense. I was having contractions every 3 minutes now, and Kieran was furious at his sister. I can't believe she did that. I'm so sorry, Mira. I should never have given her that key. At the hospital, things moved quickly. I was already 4 centimeters dilated when they checked me. The nurses got me set up in a delivery room, and my focus shifted entirely to labor. It was intense and painful and scary, but Kieran was amazing, holding my hand and coaching me through contractions. 8 hours later, at 7:43 that evening, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. We named her Juliet. She was perfect, 7 pounds and 2 ounces, with a full head of dark hair. Despite the chaotic start to the day, that moment when they placed her on my chest was pure magic. We were in the hospital for 2 days. During that time, Kieran's phone was blowing up with messages from his family. Thessaly had apparently told everyone her version of events, where she'd tried to throw me a nice surprise party and I'd freaked out and kicked everyone out for no reason. She conveniently left out the part where I was actively in labor. Kieran's parents, Dmitri and Octavia, showed up at the hospital the next day. I expected them to congratulate us on the baby, but instead, Octavia launched into a lecture about how I'd hurt Thessaly's feelings. She spent so much time and money planning that party for you, and you were very rude to her. I was exhausted from labor, hormonal, and holding my newborn daughter. I was in labor, my water had broken, there was a medical emergency happening. But you weren't due for another week. How was Thessaly supposed to know? Because I told her, multiple times. She refused to listen and refused to leave. Dmitri chimed in. Thessaly was just trying to do something nice. You could have been more gracious about it. Kieran, who'd been quietly listening, finally snapped. Mom, Dad, my wife was in labor. Our house was full of strangers. Thessaly ignored multiple requests to leave. This isn't about hurt feelings. This is about my sister's complete disregard for boundaries and basic common sense. Don't talk about your sister that way. She's devastated. She feels like Mira hates her. I don't care how she feels, I said, surprising myself with how firm my voice was. She invaded our home, ignored a medical emergency, and is now playing the victim. I don't want her around me or my daughter until she apologizes and shows she understands what she did wrong. Octavia gasped like I'd said something horrible. You can't keep Thessaly from her niece. She's family. Watch me, I said, and turned away to nurse Juliet. Kieran's parents left in a huff. Over the next few days, while we were still in the hospital and then when we got home, the family drama escalated. Thessaly was posting on social media about being excluded from her niece's life, painting herself as a victim. She never once acknowledged that she'd done anything wrong. I was trying to recover from childbirth, learn how to breastfeed, and adjust to life with a newborn. The last thing I needed was this family drama. But Thessaly wouldn't let it go. She started showing up at our house unannounced, saying she had a right to see her niece. Kieran had changed the locks, so she couldn't let herself in anymore, but she'd ring the doorbell repeatedly or knock loudly, waking the baby. After the 3rd time this happened, I'd had enough. I contacted a lawyer named Freya who specialized in family law. I explained the situation, and she helped me draft a cease and desist letter. If Thessaly continued to harass us or show up uninvited, we would file for a restraining order. The letter was delivered to Thessaly's apartment by certified mail. She lost her mind. She called Kieran screaming about how I was trying to destroy their family, how dare I threaten her with legal action, how she was just trying to be a good aunt. Kieran listened for about 30 seconds before hanging up on her. Kieran's parents called demanding we drop the legal threats. When we refused, they said we were tearing the family apart. Kieran told them that Thessaly had started this by disrespecting our boundaries and our home. And until she took responsibility and apologized, we were done engaging with her. The cease and desist worked for about 2 weeks. Then Thessaly tried a different approach. She started sending gifts for Juliet to our house, expensive things we didn't ask for. Baby clothes, toys, a fancy stroller. Each gift came with a card about how much she loved her niece and how sad she was that we were keeping them apart. We returned every single gift. We didn't want anything from her, and we especially didn't want her thinking she could buy her way back into our lives without ever acknowledging what she'd done. Then things got worse. Thessaly filed a grandparents' rights petition. Except she wasn't a grandparent, she was an aunt, so she tried to argue that she'd been a significant presence in planning for the baby and had established a relationship. It was completely baseless, but we still had to hire Freya to respond to it legally. The judge threw out Thessaly's petition in about 5 minutes, calling it frivolous and a waste of the court's time. Thessaly was ordered to pay our legal fees, which totaled $3,000. She refused to pay, so we had her wages garnished. That's when Kieran's parents finally started to see that maybe their daughter had gone too far. Octavia called Kieran, crying, asking why things had gotten so out of control. Kieran explained calmly and clearly everything Thessaly had done, from throwing the party during my labor to filing a baseless legal petition. She needs help, Mom. This isn't normal behavior. And until she gets help and takes responsibility, we can't have her in our lives or around our daughter. There was a long silence. Then Octavia said, I think I've been making excuses for her for too long. You're right, I'm sorry. It wasn't a full acknowledgement of everything, but it was something. Dmitri was harder to convince, but eventually even he admitted that Thessaly had crossed lines. We didn't hear from Thessaly for months after the court case. Life went on. Juliet grew and thrived. I recovered from childbirth and went back to work part-time from home. Kieran and I adjusted to being parents, which was challenging but wonderful. Then, about 6 months after Juliet was born, we got a letter from Thessaly. A real handwritten letter delivered by mail. In it, she apologized. She admitted she'd been selfish and attention-seeking. She said she'd started therapy and was working on understanding why she acted the way she did. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, but wanted us to know she was sorry and was trying to change. Kieran and I talked about it for a long time. We decided to respond with a letter of our own, acknowledging her apology, but explaining that rebuilding trust would take time. We weren't ready to have her in our lives yet, but we appreciated her taking steps to work on herself. It's been 2 years since that day Thessaly threw a party while I was in labor. Juliet is now a happy, healthy toddler. Thessaly has continued therapy and has slowly, very slowly, been rebuilding a relationship with us. We see her occasionally at family gatherings with Kieran's parents present. She follows our boundaries and hasn't pulled any more stunts, but I'll never forget that day. The day that should have been about welcoming my daughter into the world was instead tainted by Thessaly's selfish need for attention. She didn't just throw a party. She showed a complete lack of respect for me, my health, my baby, and our home. The financial and emotional cost of dealing with her behavior was significant. The legal fees, the stress during what should have been a joyful time, the family relationships that were damaged, all because she couldn't handle not being the center of attention for one day. Would you pursue legal action against a family member who violated your boundaries during a major life event, or would you let it go to keep the peace?